pod listeners. Welcome back to Urban Roots, a podcast that preserves place through story. Vanessa here.
And Deqah. And we have an incredible bonus episode for you today with the Decay Devils, an organization of photographers and history lovers who lead a variety of preservation efforts in Indiana. This episode is honestly a long time coming. I met co-founders Tyrell Anderson and Lori Gonzalez before the pandemic and have been so inspired by them ever since.
So the Decay Devils are probably best known for their efforts to preserve and beautify Union Station in Gary, Indiana. But that project has had a lot of highs and lows over the years, which we really get into in this episode. And I think anyone who has ever tried to do something really difficult and really meaningful and has struggled, especially people who work in nonprofits, I think y'all are going to get a lot out of this conversation.
But before we get into it, we wanted to give a shout out to the Oral History Association, OHA for short, who is hosting a very special conference in Cincinnati.
If you're not familiar, the OHA brings people together every year who are passionate about preserving oral histories. So I'm going to guess that describes a couple of Urban Roots listeners.
So if you're interested in attending, it will take place between October 30th to November 2nd at the iconic Art Deco Netherland Plaza Hotel in Cincinnati, Ohio. You can learn more on their website at oralhistory.org.
And now to our interview with Lori and Tyrell of the Decay Devils.
So, brief intros. Who are you and what do you do?
I'm Lori, Vice President of Decay Devils. I feel like we wear many hats. So we could be writing grants, we can be doing community events, we could be doing fundraising stuff, and all of the above.
Tyrell Anderson, President of Decay Devils. And Lori hit it on the head. We wear many hats, and we more so just connect a lot of dots for everyone in Northwest Indiana, whether it's art-based, preservation-based, or even placemaking.
Yeah. And so what drew you to preservation? Like, why does it matter to you?
We never saw ourselves as preservationists. We're photographers. We're artists.
Yeah.
So we had, I think it was the state landmark office reached out to us and was like, hey, we didn't know that there were preservationists in Gary. You guys should come down and do a conference and speak in Columbus for us. And we're like, when did we become preservationists?
Right.
So we never saw what we were doing as preservation. We just saw it as a community need. Hey, we want to go out, clean up a few places, and just kind of celebrate the history. That was our original focus. Like, let's just make sure that we clean up our home and share good stories. And from there, the preservation lane kind of opened up, and we just said, all right, well, I guess we're preservationists as well. But at our heart, we're artists.
Yeah, it was a shift, I think, once we accepted being preservationists. No, I just feel like it came with responsibility then, because before we're just like, we're going to do what we want and travel here and take pictures here and do this. And then when we became preservationists, that literally was more responsibility. And I feel like we had to straighten up. People were looking, you know?
It's interesting that you say that because I'm a podcaster, and Deqah at some point started calling me a preservationist in the podcast, and I was like, "Am I? Oh, okay."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like there's a lot of different ways that preservation can happen, and it's kind of nice that people are starting to think a bit more expansively around it. But yeah, I mean, before we get to how you evolved and shifted, like how did Decay Devils start in the first place?
Well, that started with Tyrell. I'll let you go.
So pre-Decay Devils, just to kind of align how we all met, I was actually doing short films and music. I reached out. I needed a mom for a short film I was doing, and my coworker introduced me to Lori. So that's how Lori, Andrea, myself, like we all met the same day. But no, fast forward, due to Instagram and Model Mayhem, I was just meeting a bunch of photographers, and we were going to a lot of the abandoned locations in Gary and just taking pictures, model pictures, etc. And Lori stayed out of town at Indianapolis at that time frame, and whenever she would pop in town, it'd just be super random, but I'll reach out to her and say, hey, we're going exploring, you should come. Lori was like, I don't know what that is, but I'll be there. So like, honestly, like our love of just being creatives and history and exploring these old places brought us all together, but there was no name. And we would go back and tell our coworkers and tell our family members about the places. And people just kept saying, you guys are crazy. You're daredevils. What's wrong with you? And we just put our own spin on it and just made a pun. And so Decay Devils like is good for us because it's a conversation piece, especially when we go out of the area. People want to know like, what the heck is a Decay Devil? Are you guys in a band? Do you guys worship Satan? What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And it starts that dialogue and that conversation.
So was it just like an Instagram handle at first, or like what did you start a nonprofit? Like what was it originally?
No, we just traveled and took pictures. That was just our photography group.
And you just
And
called yourselves Decay Devils.
Yep.
yeah, we started buying T-shirts and patches, and we really ran with it. Like we have like camouflage everything with our Decay Devil. That's how we used to, navigate when we traveled.
And our slogans, I play in abandoned buildings. I think that's what caught a lot of people's attention, especially when we go out of town. And even when we weren't out of town together and you wear your Decay Devil shirt, it says I play in abandoned buildings. People are like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah, follow us on Instagram.
We definitely like hit the branding aspect super hard, like out of the gate. There was no nonprofit. There was no money being made. It was just, hey, I'm in a photography group. We're a cool photography group.
Yep.
Go buy a T-shirt or a hoodie.
That's awesome. So then when did it start to evolve and shift?
Andrea wanted to have a nonprofit. Andrea is one of the founding 6, which said, hey, we should do something more. Most of the group did not want a nonprofit because we know that it comes with more work. A lot of our group was content with just traveling, taking pictures, and contributing when we felt like doing community cleanups or whatnot. We didn't have to organize anything. We'll just show up and have a ball. And once we switched over to like the nonprofit and all the extra work came into play, we actually started to lose members. It's a heavy lift on the backside to make this ship run.
Sure.
We gained new members. We're the largest we've ever been right now. That shift did make a big difference, just the way we are dynamic. Not to say that we don't have fun now, but trust me, just traveling and taking pictures, you can't really top that.
Yeah, the shift was different, I would say. We went from like, hey, we're just going to have fun and go places and do things to, hey, we need to learn how to write grants, or maybe we should like sit in and call different nonprofits and learn what they do. It's like literally you had to learn everything.
Yeah. Yeah, just so I understand, when you said earlier that at some point you became preservationist and you felt the sense of responsibility, was that a similar shift? Like you became a nonprofit and you also accepted a responsibility as preservationist? Like did those things happen together?
For me, it didn't. I didn't feel like a preservationist right away. I think we grew into that the more we learned on how to be a nonprofit and run a nonprofit.
Yeah, we first switched over. It was just paperwork. Nothing really changed initially. We applied for grants. We never received any. Most people here didn't want to work with us because of our name, Decay Devils. We did not get a lot of support. You also have a bunch of young people with tattoos, colorful hair running around the place. No one cared about our degrees or anything like that.
Yeah, no.
Within our 6 founders, 4 have college degrees. 2 of them have multiple degrees. No one cared. So us getting started was just paperwork. We were still doing the same things, but once we received our first grant and people started to come out to our events and our social media status just kind of exploded, that's when we started to get the phone calls and the recognition, and the news stations start calling and other preservation entities start calling. And how is Gary making some noise? How are you guys making noise with no money? We would just like to learn more about your approach. So that's when we kind of took off. So it took us probably a year and a half after being an official nonprofit before people started to actually take us serious.
I feel like that might be the title of the podcast episode, Making Noise with No Money, the Decay Devil story. So you go through this huge shift, you kind of take off. You said it was kind of like a grant that you got that led to an event, and then the Instagram, those forces kind of collided to help you take off. How has the organization shifted since then?
I feel like one of the main differences was when we got our first grant, we didn't own Union train station. So it was just like, this is a beautification project. We're going to go invite artists to paint on the windows and do this and do that. And it didn't become real until like we actually own Union train station. Then that was the more responsibility part. I was like, oh, we own this building. What are we going to do?
Yeah. I would love to actually just like spend some time really talking about the stages of the Union Station project, because I feel like a lot of people listening are going to have like their own versions of this type of project and going to be struggling through similar hurdles. And I think There's a lot to learn from both your successes and the things that went wrong. Before we dive into the weeds of it, maybe we should step back a little bit and just understand for people, what is Gary, Indiana like, and what does Union Station mean in the community?
So I feel like social media kind of gives us a bad name. Any type of media gives us a bad name, but we're alive and well and we have businesses. Gary has pockets where it's really beautiful and amazing and lively and full of people and community support, and it's really great. But just like other cities, there's areas that aren't that great. And I think people skip over, and we're still murder capital back in the 90s, which we're not. So I feel like Gary is a great place and it's really cool to explore, you know?
You're right. Like, I've heard the negative about Gary more so than the positive. Do you guys know, like, about when kind of Gary was it founded? Was it like, is it an older city? Is it a newer city?
1906, right? Or 1906.
1906.
Is when it became a city. The mill came in and it was just one of those steel cities. So they had a hand in everything building downtown. But initially, it didn't start off with these great big buildings. There were tenement houses that were for certain people. And then, the big bosses stay in the pretty houses closest to the mill. And I feel like it was always some racial issues, even when it began,
Yeah.
like segregation. That didn't end. There was redlining throughout the years. And there was crime too, just like a regular city. I just think that with the whole white flight and redlining and not having the funds to keep going, and I guess it could have been our mayors too.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say, like, demographically kind of it is today?
Probably like what, 90 some percent Black?
I feel like it's at least 90% Black. That's
Wow.
how I feel.
Yeah.
But Lori hit it on the head with the way that the city was run. Hey, we want to bring everybody together. Let's end segregation. Okay, that's great. Some people did not want to be a part of that. So you have a lot of white people who did move. The steel mills started to actually incorporate better technology into their process. So you have an entity that once ran with tens of thousands of people to shrink its manpower down to, let's say, roughly 4,000 people today. And you have your drugs being introduced in the late 80s, early 90s. So you have this whirlwind change in a 15-year time span. And you have a city that's designed for 200,000 people that currently has about 70. People don't really want to take a step back and own that tax dollars from 70,000 people are not going to accommodate, making the proper upgrades to our services.
The way things were built back then, it wasn't sustainable. It's so expensive to fix that we couldn't even afford to fix how our buildings used to look.
You go back and you look at these, and like, you can tell a lot of these buildings, don't get me wrong, they were beautiful, but it's like, man, you built this for your ego.
I know.
Right.
And you're right, a lot of the things are just not sustainable.
That's a common thread we see on the ground level when people own buildings that are like I brought Tyrell to Cincinnati once, and we went through the West End, and a lot of people who own the homes there can't afford to fix. They're built in the 1800s, and upkeep is extremely difficult. And the city seemingly doesn't seem to invest back into the people. And I've always been like, well, why can't there just be a pot of money out there for people to apply to that they can get the assistance that they need? Obviously, question of where the money comes from is beyond, but I just do feel like cities should have a little bit more of a responsibility.
Justin Garrett Moore, who works at the Mellon Foundation, he was saying one of the things that's hardest for him is that it's really hard for him to convince the folks with money to fund maintenance. Like, nobody wants to fund the day-to-day, keeping it up, making it work, making it look good, because it's just not as sexy as, like, let's fund the new thing, or like, so that's also, I think, a challenge. And like, for politicians, it's like, I want to be there at the fancy ribbon cutting. There's no ribbon cutting when it's just keeping the lights on. It's like, it's a real mental framework issue that we have, that we don't put resources into continuity and not just, the initials.
Yeah. It's quite hard to get to a point of growth when there is lack of investment in in, I think, the work that we want to do as preservation-minded people.
Yeah. You've painted a really good picture now of like the challenges facing Gary, but also like the positive things that the media won't talk about. And so like talk to us about Union Station, what it is, what it means for the community.
So Union Station is located on 2nd and Broadway. So it's almost as north as you can go for our city. The only thing north of us is U.S. Steel. U.S. Steel is our neighbors to the north. When U.S. Steel was built in 1906, the train station was built in 1910. So what would happen is all immigrants who came to this area for work, when they got off the train, you would immediately go north. You're right at the mills and you're applying for jobs. So Union Station was essentially a gateway for almost everyone who came into our area. To the south was just a big park before you get to the municipal buildings, etc.
You know what's funny? You said it was a gateway and the park's name,
Yes, gateway.
It's funny.
It was Gateway Park.
Yeah.
That's
So the major thing that changed, which ultimately led to the decline of the train station, was they brought a highway through. So I-90 came through, which helped segregate the train station from the rest of the city. But they also built a brand new train station for like our Chicago commutes called the South Shore, 1 block south. So at that point, the only thing that was going to the Union was major freight and Amtrak. So ridership goes down, building maintenance goes down, there's not as much use, we're going to go ahead and close that station. That station was closed and we're estimating 75. We can't get a solid data when it was closed. Today, if you don't know it's there or you don't drive past I-90 or you're not driving to the mill, you don't know the building exists because you can't see it. It's right in the heart of downtown. When you do come out and go south, you see the municipal buildings, you see the city hall, you see the courthouse, our 504 bank building that was built in 1925. It's 10 or 11 floors. So there's a lot of things still downtown that are in good shape, as well as some things that need attention. But today for us, it kind of represents more of that melting pot. I think a lot of people see the Union as a place where everyone's invited. We took a abandoned space, completely overgrown, and it almost has a park feel when you go visit it. We redid bricks, we redid concrete. There's murals all around. And even though the building is kind of off limits as far as entering, you don't necessarily feel as though you're at an abandoned building because the grounds are very well maintained and it's just art and color, completely surrounding the entry to the building all the way to the far east end of the building. And the far east end of the building takes you to actually the national parks. They're our neighbors to the east. So we've been in a lot of conversation with the parks. There's a conversation to actually bring a bike trail. That bike trail will connect to existing trails. The end vision, you will have a trail that will go from Michigan State through Indiana, through Illinois to Wisconsin. And we will be kind of a trailhead once that component is linked here in Gary. So when we look at the people who are there, the people who come to visit, we see the tags on social media. Photographers go there doing graduation shoots. We see musicians going there doing music videos. We have people come in doing short films. We have some people who just go there and eat or drone race on our property. And we just make sure we keep it as safe as possible, as inviting as possible, so that once we are in a position to reopen, we still want those individuals to be a part of the site. And we know that preservation is really more about how do you connect with that location. Most people don't care about the history. Just being honest, they care about what's my history with this location. So we are trying to create a space where people can come make some new memories with us or with their peers and just get people more excited about what this space could be moving forward. Again, we did not have a lot of support when we first started. So our first reach out was to the school system. We wanted to see if we can beautify some of the abandoned schools and then clean them out and recycle the material that was left behind. No one wanted to work with us. And Lori suggested, hey, let's try Union. We didn't have any green light from the city. We didn't have any MOUs or anything. So Andrea wrote the grant to do the beautification at the Union and was actually selected. And so once we got the call from the foundation, Legacy Foundation, the feedback that Kelly gave us was, hey, this is a great project. Is Gary on board? So as soon as we got off the phone.
You mean the city, the
Yes,
city, like
yes, was the
municipal
city.
government?
Correct, because the city owned the property. What I did on my side, as soon as I got off the phone, I immediately left work. I said, hey, I have an emergency. Can you guys cover for me for an hour? I called Lakeisha. I said, hey, where's your boss? I need to talk to him right now.
This is just someone you knew? who
Yeah,
worked at the
Lakeisha's
city.
a planner,
Yes.
and I went to planning school with Lakeisha,
Yeah.
so it was kind of full circle.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Lakeisha worked for Joe at the time. I said I need to talk to him like right now. I left work, still have my uniform on. I went and gave him my elevator pitch. Hey, we got this grant. We don't want to lose it. We just need an MOU. And he signed off on it and didn't expect him to do that because we were just faced with so much opposition. So that's what started the project. It was Lori's idea. Andrea wrote the grant. Lakeisha got us in the door. So honestly, it's a lot of hands, a lot of moving components to make this, come to life. So from there, we did our cleanup, tons of press. WGN News picked us up in Chicago. They did a evening segment on us, which won an Emmy. A lot of great feedback from the artists and the locals. And no one else would give us funding because we didn't own the building.
Yeah.
So it took us another year and a half to get ownership of the building just about. As soon as we get ownership, we lost that momentum. So it was like, great, we own the building. Let's take off. We're going to get this restoration underway. Let's launch our capital campaign. And then we go right into COVID. So it's like every time we get our footing, we hit a roadblock. And come out of COVID, great, let's rebrand. Let's branch out again. And the mayor reached out with the opportunity for us to partner with a potential anchor tenant. And that anchor tenant said, I'm going to help you raise all the money for this building. And he did. He raised $8 million for the full restoration. And then we switched mayors. And our current mayor didn't like the plan, so he did not sign off on it.
Oh, no. Because it required some sort of like mayoral rubber stamp or something like that?
The original agreement was to be a partnership between the city, our anchor tenant, and us as a nonprofit, which has not been done in our city and still is not at this point. But the current mayor did not like the partnership, so he scratched the plans, and that puts us back at, I won't say square one, because we do have a little bit of funding raised. But at this point,
Yeah, I was going to say, what happened to the $8 million?
essentially that person is not being permitted to work in our city.
Okay.
For his project. So he just took it down the highway to another city.
Oh.
And honestly,
Ugh,
he just went down the highway, did the exact same project. So
that's brutal.
yeah, those funds just essentially just went next door to Hammond.
So you had this whole buildup of an opportunity and then change mayors. And as we know, how cities tend to go is the mayor kind of sets the pace and they can really decide what's being done and what's not being done. And I think it's extremely challenging. So, how did you guys recover from that?
I was over it. I'm ready to quit. And Lori and I talked about it. And this is how our conversations tend to go. I tell Lori I'm ready to quit. And then she says, all right, I understand. And then she'll call back tomorrow and ask the same question like we didn't talk about it the day before. So that's kind of her way of saying like, you can't quit. So for me, it's just along the lines of we have committed a lot to not just this building, but we do a lot for the community. So we recently restored a steam engine train in the park. We do free festivals, free giveaways. We write grants for other entities. We do a lot, and we don't get paid for any of this.
Really?
Yeah, we don't pay ourselves. That is, when you guys say, what do you see yourself going in the future? Like, that is my end goal. We have 25, 26 members at this point. My end goal is to put us in a position where we are starting to get paid for our actions. And whether it's writing a grant, whether it's putting your art up, whether it's donating your time, I would love for our nonprofit and the people who support us to start to see some type of resources come back in to be more sustainable.
Because it's been hard to get, I would say, the funding you need to really do the full preservation project. It sounds like you've been doing an incredible job in helping upkeep this place without funding or maybe a little bit of funding that you've gotten recently.
And so that's kind of like a half a truth, because it's like every time we get a little bit momentum, we hit a snag. And so we actually started getting funding to like hit the restoration component hard when the previous mayor came to us with this proposal. And so when he gave the proposal, we actually stopped writing grants. We're like, well, I guess we don't have to write grants anymore because our anchor tenant has just come with a big check. Hey,
Right.
he even paid for our
Yeah.
clean out. This is like no paperwork signed or anything. He came and was like, oh, we can't really tell the story without cleaning the building out. Made a few phone calls, and next thing I know, the following week, the building's been, demoed out. That is the type of people that we're working with. So even once we did sign our contracts, it was like, okay, great. Well, we were already working on the next project.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because you thought you had the roadway.
Yeah. So like even the grant funding that we had $145,000 secured to go towards our phase one, which is going to be our, hey, let's do our architectural blueprints, etc. So we hit the ground running in 20. What we got that in 22?
Yeah. No. 20.
Was
it the end of 22? Yeah, it was the end of 22.
So the end of 22, Lori and I talked, and we're like, we're gonna just write. And Lori got the first grant for $125,000. I got another one for 20.
So just to make sure I got the timeline right, when you're starting to gain this momentum around fundraising, that was after you got the ownership. Is that right? Or is that before?
So we got ownership in 2018.
You got the ownership in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Would you mind just actually quickly talking about what that looked like? Was that really expensive? Was that a headache?
No, not at all. Literally.
Really?
It was like a quick claim deed. It just kind of transferred over the property. They said it would be $10. We never paid $10. Like literally, it was kind of gifted to us in a way.
But from the city.
From the city, yes. Yeah, it was really simple. We kept talking to redevelopment, and I'm like, everybody thinks we own this building. Everybody wants to see what's next. I'm like, we don't own it, so we can't do anything. And I think us just talking like that, they were like, okay, fine, you do something then. And eventually,
you were. Yeah. You guys were. You were doing it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So that's the thing. So it took us almost a year and a half for us to get ownership. And that was an internal battle as well, because redevelopment wanted us to have it, but other people in the city did not. So that's where there was a time frame. And so it was like 2017, a lot of momentum, and then everything drops down. 2018, okay, we got the building. Let's get prepared for a nice launch in 2019. We're going to do a capital campaign. We're going to hit the ground running, which we did, and then we hit COVID.
Before COVID, how are y'all doing this? Was this just internally? You're just meeting, you're brainstorming. Did you bring in like an advisor? Was the city providing support? Like how? Because it's a huge endeavor that you're talking about. It's not like easy peasy.
Lori talked about it earlier when she said we reach out to other entities that have done the similar work. And so Lori reached out to a gentleman named Vance Kenny. Vance did some redevelopment work for the bank building that we told you about earlier, 504 bank building. He helped put the equity stack together. He actually set us down and gave us a step-by-step blueprint of how we need to attack our fundraising strategy, who we need to call, what time frame we need to call these people. He gave us an exact blueprint. And once we started to put it to motion, we hit COVID. So there were no entities helping us. This was honestly just us writing grants and talking to people who had faith in what we were doing.
Right. Lori, what's your memory of that those pre-COVID conversations? Like what were you learning? What was surprising you? And like what did you have optimism around it with those conversations?
I feel like I always have optimism, even when things are like dead. I'm like, well, what are we gonna do? As far as learning, like we just had great conversations with people, like Tyrell said, who believed in us. So if they know us and they see what we're doing and like, oh my God, you guys are amazing. You do amazing work. And it's like, okay. And like back then I would literally just call people and be like, hey, I'm Lori, Vice President of Decay Devils. Can I go see your building? Can I have a conversation with you? Can we go do this? And literally I would just bug people and call people and have these conversations to learn. I remember when we first started out, I asked to sit in someone's meeting, like another nonprofit. And he was like, okay. And I don't know. I think it was more submersive, just jumping in.
And playing off each other's strong suits. So like Lori has no problem like cold calling people. I'm a complete introvert. So what are you good at? Okay, great. Can you do XYZ? We definitely championed that early And we still do that now as an organization. I'll give you a great example. The grant for $125,000 is the highest grant that we've ever received. Lori wrote the grant, and I was like, dude, you're a good writer. Like, just write it. And she painted this perfect story. And then she's like, okay, you do the budget. I am excellent at numbers. I can make whatever number fit.
Yeah, I was like, I don't want to do that part.
So it's like, once we kind of figured out like our formula, is like, man, like, let's really focus on what we're great at. This is going to help us go to the next level. We shared that with more of our group members. And like, even now, we went from 3 people doing grants to like the next grant we have on deck is only $50,000, but you have input from 6 additional people.
Mm-hmm.
Because people want to learn, they want to do more, and sometimes they just need the opportunity. And so we're going to see how this next grant goes, but we're definitely starting to get that more all hands on deck.
That's true.
I find myself at a particular crossroads, and I found it really important to have this conversation with both of you because, like, I know that y'all have been around for a long time, and you might have ups and downs, but you still keep going. And it was really important for me to hear why and how you keep going when it gets really hard. So thank you both for really sharing. And I'm very proud of where you guys are despite the hurdles. And I'm really proud that you guys keep going and are strong together. And I hope in my future that I can build a membership in that way too.
Thank you for saying that. We appreciate
that. We don't really talk about the difficulties. On the outside, we look like a well-oiled machine to a lot of people. And Lori and I both tell you there's been lots of arguments and fights. And like I said, we lost people. We've had a lot of turmoil, not just internally, but even with external powers. I think the only thing that kind of helps us is that we were cool before we decided to step into this field. I always looked at us as family before we even said that we were going to do a nonprofit. Because we were, I don't care what it is. If we're in the same area, because like I said, Lori didn't live here for a few years. Hey, I'm in Indianapolis. What's going on? Oh, it's my son's birthday. I'm there. I don't care I didn't even come down there to see her, but to the people I went to see, hey, it's my girl. It's her son's birthday party. I'll holler at y'all later, So like we always treated each other like family. It's like family first. And so we have a different, unique dynamic. The first 2 people trying to figure out how to assist, Lori and myself, it's like a family thing. We just make sure that we always tap in and just make sure we help uplift each other. And I think a lot of people on the outside looking in kind of bought into how we treat each other. And we're starting to see that from our members. So it's less transactional as some of the other nonprofits that I'm a part of. And I think that's what makes the difference. I'm a part of other nonprofits where, hey, if you don't pay your $1,000, you're not on the board.
Yeah.
Also, life happens. We all had full-time jobs. Right now, I'm not. I'm going to get my master's and focus on that. But as far as like holding each other accountable, like I even told Tyrell, I'm like, I had my grandson for over a month. I was out of the loop. I kept falling behind. And I'm like, okay, please tell me what I have to do because I can't remember anything. And then I'm like, please text me. And of course, today I forgot again at 1:00, and it's like, you have times like that in your life. I've lost a parent last year. I lost another one the year before. So like, then you're just like depressed or, you go through these things and you have these people here to console you and to kind of boost you along to say, hey, you okay? Can you handle this? And if you can't, people pick up the slack. So it's just being there for people,
Yeah. No, that's incredible. That's incredible. This summer has been incredibly difficult for me. The one thing that does keep me going is what I started originally. These interviews are really important for me to keep doing because listeners, they need to know about the Decay Devils. The fact that you do what you do and it's not about the money, and the fact that you keep doing it anyway, other people aren't doing that. Everything is transactional. And I also agree with you guys where it's like I've actually gotten turned down from funding from major grantors because we don't like to ask our board members to pay dues.
Wow.
So I don't know. Like, it is nice to know that you guys have each other to kind of support you and bring you back. And I think, like, for me, I'm super inspired. I have been inspired with you guys since day one. Like, for real.
Thank you.
I want to tap in with the funder who you said they turned you down for these specific reasons.
Yeah. They said it showed that they weren't committed or
Well,
something.
this is how I interpret it. You don't perfectly align with my vision, and at this time it just makes sense for us not to have any partnership together, because trust me, we put ourselves in that position where we went chasing money, and we actually received the money, and we were unhappy for that entire grant cycle because
Right.
we were living up to expectations of the foundation versus expectations of our mission. We just kind of lost track of our mission because we were just chasing money. We think we can get this. We think we'll get this. And that was another like reality check. Say, hey, let's reel it back in. If it doesn't fall within these guidelines, and if it goes against our mission, we're not touching it. I don't care. And we've been holding true to that. We've got burned a few times partnering with people because we wanted to get a check. We thought it was going to be beneficial, and it just caused more headache than anything. So
yeah, we can relate. Yeah.
I honestly would kind of just ask you to take a step back and view it in that light. You know what works for you, and you're just getting started. So it's going to be very hard to just say, hey, board members, you need to give me XYZ, because your board members want to see how long is this going to go. It's a lot of like this trial and error period. We used to make people pay and kick them out when they didn't pay. We stopped that. It was one of our group members who was like, well, so and so is really good at leading these tours. We need them. And it took us having like just sit down conversations with our team to actually understand that everybody cannot donate financially, but you can give your time, you can give your sweat equity is what we call it.
Yeah. No, we've been there for sure.
And it's kind of funny, like we honestly didn't know you can pay yourself until we were having a conversation with another artist, and they got a big grant. It's like, oh yeah, they essentially took half the grant and paid themselves. And we were like, you can pay yourself?
I still felt a little guilty though, trying to move into that area. Like, we can pay ourselves, but then we won't be able to do this if we pay ourselves.
Right.
Sometimes I'll go overboard and suggest, can we do this? Can we do this? And you're the money guy, so you're just like, if we do that, then we can't pay ourselves. And I'm like, but I really want that. So then it's like, okay, we're not going to pay ourselves.
And even with the paying ourselves part, we still put the money back in the group.
Yeah.
So I want to say this by like just kind of like tossing out how we started. All of our first money came off for t-shirt sales and yard sales.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
So we had like maybe $7,000-8,000 in the bank. We did one event. We did a masquerade ball. Hey, let's get dressed up. We lost all of our money.
Wow.
Every single penny. Did not sell enough tickets. So to go from maybe $300 in the bank till right now, we probably got close to $60,000, and that's just like what's left over. Like just extra, like not money that we have to like put towards grants or anything like that. That's a lot of work that we've done to just kind of build that pot, just so we can have a little bit of flexibility, just so we can have a little bit of funding that we can move around. And I think at our highest, I remember when we first cracked six figures.
I know. I screenshot that.
It was just like, I know it's a grant. We know that this money is allocated, but at the end of the day, it was like such a proud moment for both of us, because we remember those struggles in the early days. But I know for a fact, if I had the resources to invest in myself and actually do this for a year and a half, I know that we can pay ourselves. I know that we can do it properly. We have peers that are 100% consultants, and this is what they do to put food on their tables. But again, it's more along the lines of properly getting to that point. And trust me, I understand the point of getting beat up with this last project falling through. We lost $18 million. So the developer raised 8 and we raised 10 because we were able to leverage
Wow.
those funds for other grants because we know how to write now. So
Right.
so he got the 10. He got 8. We raised an additional 10, and it all went out the window. And I'm happy it happened now at this age. If it happened, I was like in my 20s, I would have probably lost it.
How do you keep on hoping?
For me, I just feel like we're not done. We're just not done. And it's crazy because before all this stuff happened, we'd be like, oh my gosh, what if we got a grant? Then we get a grant. Oh my gosh, what if we own this building? Then we own a building. So what if we get it done? And then we almost got it done and that didn't happen. But we're still not over. For me, it's like I see completion in our future. I see bigger things. This Union Station is just the first thing, I just see more. I don't know. I just see more.
Lori sees more. I don't look at the building as like my measuring point. And some people might not see it on the outside looking in because a lot of focus has been put around the building. And I more so look at the relationships that have come because of the building. I don't think we would be as tight as we are without this space. I don't think I would have met as many people as I have without this space, or even some of the traveling that I've done without this building. So for me, it's not necessarily like I need to get this building done. It's along lines of be appreciative for this moment. Be appreciative for the faces. Like Deqah, we would have never crossed paths if I wouldn't have done work on this building. And then you invite me back out to Cincinnati, and it changes the conversation because when we did Cincinnati, it was, hey, let's run through real fast, take some pictures of the buildings. You said, hey, let me come back and give you a history lesson. Let me help you appreciate Cincinnati a lot more. That's just one small conversation. When we're talking about dozens and dozens of people who we've met in this field who are also struggling and fighting some of the same hurdles and downfalls. And we had a conference last year, our Dismantle conference, and you had a bunch of adults in there bawling their eyes out because everyone felt the same sentiment that you felt, Deqah. And it's just like,
it was so sweet.
and even me, I'm crying. I was so mad. I'm like, I only cry once a year. This is number 2.
Yeah, no, I don't cry in front of people like at all, ever, like ever.
And so that was the thing. It was like everyone's telling their stories, and we're all at different points in our journey. But there are a lot of people who are like up here right now, and they remember like, yeah, I was there. And you see it turning and turning and turning. So even the space where you are now, I can relate because we were there. So for me, it's just like, I just want to enjoy the journey more so than thinking about, I need to finish this building, because I don't think that I've taken enough time to like just actually smell the roses. If you look at the grant dollars that we've input in the city alone, we could have had our phase 1, 2, and 3 done with this building.
Right.
Just looking at our community engagement during COVID, we gave all our grant money away because we couldn't do anything. Like, we actually gave it to other nonprofits who are having food drives and everything. So it's more along the lines of like, we've been very selfless. And I think that just kind of just really highlights just who we are. It's not really about necessarily we need to save a building. It kind of just goes back to like, just how do we be better for each other? And this building, I think, just kind of represents the union. This is how we are. This is how we come together. Honestly, this is how we come together to show up for each other.
Yeah.
We got some members that just go out on the weekend just to clean up and barbecue. Honestly, like, that is how, hey, I'm finna go there this weekend, grill out. If anybody wants to come, I'm going to do doing pickup. These members stay in Chicago. They don't live around the corner. We have really kind of made that family unit. And so it just represents like a big family to me, more so than just a location.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really actually incredibly moved by what y'all have done with the site. It's a public art project as well as a park. Is that something you guys want to keep continuing? Because if, let's say, you got the money to fix the building up, would it be still quite like community and people oriented?
Lori and I talked once we thought that Union was actually nearing its completion. And we really wanted to do other sites. Our thought was let's do sites that are in close proximity and figure out ways that we can link them together. especially once we worked with our last anchor tenant and actually saw how the equity stacks worked and where the funding was coming from, it was like, I think we can do this at a different site and actually have that fun community engagement, that destination place. What's that destination place? And we have similar things downtown, but they're kind of disjointed. So let's say that you're from the outside area, you come to the baseball game, but nothing else in the area holds your attention. You're just going to go back home. So it's like, how can we just figure out like how to tap into the historical component, make these locations destinations, but also revenue generating so that we're just not writing grants for the rest of our lives. And that's kind of the model that we learned when we were, in Italy. Like the Colosseum pays for almost all their landmarks just based off the traffic. So it's like, man, how can we actually get the traffic? We have the bodies who come through the area. How do we actually get them to patronize, and how do we shift those resources to other landmarks? And eventually, how do we pay ourselves? And we know what to do. It's just executing it. We were close with this last iteration, and I'm pretty sure that even though the pieces are going to change, the names are going to change, I'm pretty sure we can still get to that same point.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of kind of closing off the interview here. Yeah, thank you both for your time. And obviously, if there's anything else you want to share, please take the moment to say anything you would like.
You are providing a platform, and that's pretty amazing because I'll just speak and say what I want, but having a platform to do it is great. So we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you both for the work that you're doing and also just for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it again.
Thank you for listening to this Urban Roots episode, and a huge thanks to Lori Gonzalez and Tyrell Anderson from the Decay Devils. Your hosts are me, Deqah Hussein-Wetzel.
And me, Vanessa Quirk. This episode was edited by Deqah, myself, Skyler Ficklin, and mixed by Connor Lynch.
You can find us on Instagram at Urban Roots Culture or email us at urbanrootspodcast@gmail.com.
And if you don't already know, Urban Roots is part of the nonprofit that Deqah founded in 2021 called Urbanist Media. And it takes a lot to do what we do.
The podcast does not solely run on passion. It takes money too.
That's right. That's why we'd love to ask you to give whatever you're able to give. Whether it's $25 or $50, $3, whatever it is, it helps. So to do so, please find us at PayPal or Venmo at Urbanist Media.
Or if you're a fan of Patreon, you can become a monthly subscriber for as little as $1. And you can get early access to new Urbanist Media content as well. You can find the link to the Patreon and the donation buttons on our website, urbanistmedia.org.
Okay, I think that's it for today. Deqah, would you mind hitting the good people with our new tagline?
Urban Roots, preserving place through story.